This is the third video in my little series on what will make America great. The first one, I talked about how we came to this land without permission, stole the land, and built our society on the backs of stolen people. Part two, I talked a little bit about the complexities of guilt and responsibility, especially when there's multiple generations involved, and also when multiple nations and perpetrators have been involved. And that touched, of course, on the hot button of reparations, which is the topic that I'll begin with this one. At the heart of that issue is the question, can a nation atone for historical injustices? And if so, then how? I'm going to share some history in this one, and then I'm going to talk about thoughts about next steps forward in the next one. So this is some history. The idea of a state apologizing for and paying for its actions really emerged after the Holocaust, which resulted, of course, in more than 6 million murders. Germany has paid hundreds of millions of dollars to Israel and to individuals, as well as other steps. Those developments sparked a movement within the United States to address its treatment of Native Americans, and eventually the Indian Claims Commission awarded about $1.3 billion to 176 different tribes and bands, which was an average of about $1,000 a person. It then took decades, though, for a formal apology, and when it did come, it was buried in a defense spending bill. In 1988, the Civil Liberties Act resulted in a formal apology for the internment of over 120,000 Japanese American citizens, along with 80,000 checks for $20,000 each. The Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920 established a land trust for Native Hawaiians, whose extensive land holdings were taken by the federal government in the wake of its overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii. The act allowed people of at least one-half Hawaiian ancestry to lease homesteads back from the federal government at a rate of $1 for a period of 99 years. It was land which, of course, Hawaiians had owned and now were allowed to lease back. Much of the land, in addition, was remote and unfit for development. And then the United States only apologized for its treatment of Native Hawaiians in 1993, a century after the overthrow. I'm going to mention next the Tuskegee experiments, in which 600 black men were left untreated for syphilis after being misled by officials who enrolled them involuntarily in what they called a treatment program. In 1973, after a class action lawsuit, the men were awarded $10 million, and the United States promised to provide health care and burial services for them. Eventually, the state ended up awarding health care and other services for the men's spouses and descendants. It took, however, until 1997 for a presidential apology for the experiment. That incident involved, of course, men who were black, which leads me to my final portion of this video and this historical overview. I want to make the point that the preceding examples prove there is precedent for reparations, even though at least some of those examples were, I'm sure, inadequate and belated. And yet, despite the precedent, and despite the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which seems to codify a precedent, the United States has yet to tackle the question of reparations for the enslavement of Africans from the earliest days of colonization up until the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Though the United States apologized for slavery and segregation in 2009, it's never addressed the question of redress for the descendants of enslaved people. In fact, we've just continued to add salt to the wounds. And just one example. While rejecting grants of land to African Americans, the government officially opened land to the Midwest to white farmers and funded large gave grants for land grants and also funds for colleges for the education and subsidies to prop up the farms. Why was our government willing to engage the reparations question in specific ways for the other examples I've given, but not relative to African Americans? And so in the next video in this little series, I want to talk about a little bit more about what I think might be the reasons, and then offer some thoughts about what might be next steps that could be taken. Thank you.